All right, what did I promise to do to you today?
Punishments.
Candy bars for everyone?
What?
Candy bar.
So I heard. That's all I have to do that too.
I must be in a different universe. All right, I don't remember what I was going to do, so let's just keep plugging along with what we were doing. One thing I want to prepare you for is your next assignment, however. I'm not assigning it, I'm preparing you for it. In your book, and this is why I ask you to bring them, I know a couple of you have it on order. Uh-oh. In your book, they describe 3 databases. In the very near future, I'm going to ask you to go into your book, chapter 1. They describe those 3. These assignments, by the way, are on my website. They're called database 1 and 2, I think, something like that. Let's go take a quick look. They describe in the book 3 databases. Premier Products, which is kind of a parts customers database. Henry Books, which is a bookstore database. And Alexamar Marina, which is marinas and yachts and good, cool stuff like that. So those 3 are described in the book. This is the database assignment that I'm talking about that I'm going to be giving you probably next week. And what I'm going to ask you to do in this assignment is be very patient and hope that things pop up. Thank you. Let's create an ERD, and that you're ready to do. Now what you're going to be doing here is a little bit different though, because you're going to be reverse engineering. The tables are already built. The premier products are shown to you as PowerPoint kind of gives you an idea. There's a customer table. There's a parts table. There's an orders table, an order line table. Those tables are already described in your book. You may not add tables. There are no many-to-many relationships. But I still want you to draw the ERD because it'll be very helpful for you when we get around to doing the actual SQL. And that's what's next after we get done with this design, probably another week or 2. And when we get done with the design, then we're going to start learning SQL. We're going to use these databases. Those ERDs come in very handy, especially for you who aren't very familiar with these tables. So with that assignment, there's 2 parts to it. The first part of the assignment says, for premier products only. Give me the ERD with all its stuff, just like you just did in your practice exercises. And then give me the data dictionary, which we're going to start talking about today. If that seems easy, because you're reverse engineering, it should. Because I'm not giving you a field list to say what tables are there, etc. The tables are already created. You cannot modify the table designs. Just want you to reverse engineer the process. I happen to know that this is a very valuable skill because my wife had to do it. When she got her first job, there were no ERDs in this big monster database, and she said, how am I supposed to keep all this state? She started drawing ERDs. Put them on the edge of her desk, and they always disappeared because other people wanted them. It's a very valuable skill to reverse engineer. So don't be making up new fields. They already described that for you here, right, in your book. These are similar to what's in your book. These field names, stick with them. They're ugly. Some of these should be auto number fields. They're not. Doesn't matter. Stick with the field names that are here. Stick with the tables that are here. And simply draw the diagram that represents these tables, including the primary keys and the linking fields. How do you know which ones are which where? Well, if you look at the tables, there's some clues there that'll help you. Like, here's an order number, here's an order number. I wonder if those 2 tables are related. I think so. And it'll be your job to figure out what the cardinality is. Here's a hint. There's no many-to-manys and there's no one-to-ones. That ought to narrow it down. But is it one-to-many or many-to-one? That you still kind of have to figure out, but it shouldn't be too difficult. So Visio that, save it for later. That'll keep you practiced in the ERDs. Can't get enough practice doing these things. Questions on that?
So this is my secret book.
That book.
These-
Yep. That what you see in there should be very similar to this, right? Yes.
What I see is up there.
They're in there in chapter 1. While you're doing that, you might want to read through chapter 1. Kind of explains what they're thinking about with these databases, but that's about all it does. Other questions?
Do you know if the library has copies of those?
I doubt it. You're gonna have to make friends till yours gets here. It has been ordered, so fingers crossed. And I'm not assigning it. I could probably send you this, but I don't know how accurate it is. I think it's just an overdue. Okay. You got a couple of friends in the room. Bug them. Borrow their book for a while. I don't even have one. Or maybe I do. I'll be your friend. Pig will be your friend. You can borrow from me.
We'll get it figured out.
Mm-hmm. All right. What's next? We did all this 6 stuff, right? Determine the foreign keys. And now we're supposed to remove any calculated fields and constants. So what I'm going to do is take you back to the student data field list. I'm going to do the student database first because it's a little smaller to start with, and then we'll build and go into the parts one, see how it goes there. Just browsing through that. See anything there that is calculated? Now we've already split the student name into multiple parts. We'll pretend we did that. Street, city, state, zip, phone, email, program code, GPA. GPA. Calculated. So if I was walking over to the whiteboard, I would pull that out and make a list. Anybody know how to calculate GPA? Just trusting Midstate that they got your GPA right? Number of credits times the points you earned for that grade that you got in that class. Add all those up, divide by the total number of credits. Geez, that's a pretty complicated formula. Well, the point of removing these is that we also need to make sure that we have all the pieces parts to calculate it. So I need total credits. How do you, that's a calculated field. So I have a calculated field that uses a calculated field. How do I get total credits? By adding up all the credits. Do I have, there's credits, so I'm good. How about grade points? No, I don't have that, but I have the grade, and given the grade, I can figure out the grade points. So that's all, grade points are also calculated. So in this case, the GPA, we're going to pull that out. I think this is a copy, so I think I can do that. Pull that out and say that's a calculated field. And if you wanted to, you could put the formula here. You don't have to. And you could just say this is the total points divided by total credits. Where an A equals 4 and an A minus equals 3.67 or something like that, and a B plus is 3.3 and so on. So how do I get total credits? By adding up all the credits. I can do that. If it's math, Access MySQL, they can do it. They can calculate. We need the total points. Well, in order to get the total points, you take all of these, A equals 4 times the credits. So yes, I can do that now. So in my database, I have the fields necessary to calculate this. That's important. A very common mistake is to take a calculated field out and then find out you don't have what you need to calculate it in your database. Somewhere. Doesn't matter what table, somewhere. Course grade, is that calculated?
Depends.
On what?
Should try to use the database for it.
Do I have any information here about assignments? No. This is that student database. Remember, students, instructors, classes, sections, enrollments. Nothing about assignments. So no, your grade here is not calculated. At the end, I take your A minus, your B plus, and I put it into the system. And all your assignments, by the way, are lost at that point. Midstate does not care what grade you got on your assignment tracker program after you finish programming logic intermediate. You got an A in programming logic intermediate, that's what counts. So no, the grade is not calculated. Somebody has to enter the A, the C plus, the B minus, whatever it is. Course number, course name, description, credits, no. Course time, no. Course days, no. Instructor number, instructor. So there, that's the only calculated field in there. At least from my perspective. Anybody want to argue? It's a whole lot easier if you don't. Okay, so one calculated field, and that's what I mean by going through the field list that you got and looking for anything that might be calculated. So that's the only one. So that's an example. Let's do it again real quick here for the clinic field list. Is that what you are? No. Where's my clinic field list? Customer first name, last name, phone number, email, drop-off date, return date. Tell me if you find something here that's calculated. Type, brand, model, reported, completed, task name, notes, payment method. And I have a couple of others here. Parts cost, no. Replacement part, no. And here's my tables. That's where we started. There was a calculated field. I already pulled it out. The work order total. That's probably our $35 base fee plus any parts that we added. Should be able to handle that. So calculated fields are gone. That's a fairly easy step compared to what we've been doing, right? Remove all the calculated fields. Remember, a constant is something that never changes, like everybody lives in the state of Wisconsin at the clinic, but I didn't see state on that list. So that's an example of a constant. Now, we need to name and assign fields to the appropriate table. At this point, all of our redundant data is already in our database. We've put all the linking fields, that's redundant data, right? Because the student ID shows up in the student table and in the enrollment table. The course ID shows up in the course table and in the section table. They show up in multiple places, but they're necessary for linking. That's our minimal redundant fields. Minimal redundant data. Every other field that's left gets assigned to one and only one table. Now, how do I document that? Don't use the ERD. I like my ERDs nice and pristine. Keys, linking fields, that's it. So I don't use the ERD. I'm going to use a different tool. On my website, if you want to follow along, it's up to you, but you must be using Microsoft Word. Can't use any of the fake ones that are out there. On my website, I believe it's under the instructor's notes, there's this document called a Data Dictionary template. The Data Dictionary is just that. It's a dictionary of our data. It's a list of all of our fields, which tables they're assigned to, what types they are. Are they primary keys? Are they linking fields? What validation do we want it? This is a very detailed analysis of our data, and it also designates a lot more of our requirements. But step one is to pull all of the fields. Well, first of all, we've got to modify our, I'm going to download that. Notice this is a D, it's hard to see up there, but this is a DOCM document. The little exclamation mark on the icon here tells you that there are macros installed. Macros could have viruses. Not mine, I'm not that smart. Right, so you don't have to worry about this. It's a macro enabled, that's why it's not DOTX. The M is for macros. This document has macros, which are just recorded steps. They're kind of like snippets. They're recorded steps embedded in the document. So be careful, but shouldn't be a problem. I'm going to open that. And I'm going to enable the editing, and I'm going to immediately save it with a better name. Good news is if you save over my original, it's on the website. Go get another copy. It's not a problem. So I'm going to do a save as. Desktop sounds good. And we will call this the student data dictionary. That's what I call that table with students, instructors, and classes. I'm just going to keep it nice and short. Student. And a little later, we'll create another one of these data dictionaries for the clinic. All right, here's what it looks like. First of all, at the top, there's a key. Now, why is that so close to the top of the document? Because I have the margins collapsed. If you double click, they come back, and now I can see margins. So I'll leave, that's what you're used to seeing, so I'll leave it that way for a minute, and then I'll recollapse it in a little while. I have a macro built in. If you want, this is a table. Right? And our first table is TBL programs. I'm doing this from memory right now. I'm going to bring up the ERD in a second. Change the name of the table, and then you put the keys in here in red. Linking fields, foreign keys, put them in here with the little lightning bolt after it. Logical keys, check for duplicates, gets that little guy. If we're looking it up, gets that little icon. And if you want to add a new row, you can just hit the control number plus sign. Number, the plus sign on the number keypad is what that means. So somewhere embedded inside here, and I'm not going to get into it too deep, but if I go to the developer tab, here's the macros, and the macros in here are check for duplicates. That inserts this little symbol, red check mark. Insert a row. Insert the link symbol and add a table. These are macros that I have recorded so that when I say I'm ready for a new table, let's finish programs before I forget. Now I need an ERD. A lot of stuff going on here. Should be an ERD in here. Student enrollment. I've already named these things. So the table name, I'm just transferring them now to my data dictionary. So here's my TBL programs, and the key is program code. So here's the key, program code. Was it program or program?
Single.
Pardon me?
Single. Field.
Program, I just wondered if I abbreviated it. Program code. And there are no linking fields in this table, so just take that out. And for right now, that table's done. I'm not adding fields. This is preliminary. Really, all I'm doing is transferring what's in my ERD to my data dictionary. So that table is ready to go, ready to start accepting new stuff. I'm ready for a new table. Well, according to my key up here, if I press Control T, it should add a new table for me. Oh, magic. No, macro. It's just programming in Microsoft Word. And so this was now program enrollments, if I remember right. I'm going to wish I had that in a different page. TBL program enrollments. You might, if you paid attention there, notice that the name was already highlighted. That's part of my macro. Start a new page, build a new table that looks exactly like this, and not only that, but highlight the table name so you can just start typing the new table name. Program enrollments. And it should have two keys, the program code and probably the student ID. Yep. But my code says that the keys should be bold-faced and red. So I'm going to cheat and use the format painter and say, poof, you're bold-faced and red. My ERD also says, let's see if I can get these side by side here. Ugh. Do not snap unless I tell you to. My ERD also says that these are links. Okay. To make them links, it's easy. There was one there, I erased it. But according to the key, again, to add a link, you just press Control L. So Control L, there's a link. Control L, link. I'm just duplicating what's in the ERD. I've already done all the work, but I have to have a table someplace to put my fields. This is how I do it. Now I'm ready for the next table. Control T, adds a new one, TBL students. Key is student ID. And if I remember right, it doesn't have any linking fields. Now notice each one of these is on a separate table. That's convenient. But notice that when they're small, that's a lot of scrolling. Well, that's what, if you point to the page break, it's a Microsoft Word feature. If you point to the page break and double click, takes out all the white space. They're still on separate pages. It's just Microsoft Word is taking all the extra white junk out. So I can scroll easier between these. Ultimately, I like to alphabetize these, so it might behoove us to alphabetize these to start with. But let's see, I'm going to add, every time I add a new table, it puts it on the end. Doesn't mean I can't move them later. If you're smart, you'll take a look at your table list if it's relatively small, alphabetize them, and then put them in that order, and you won't have to rearrange them. Rearranging can be kind of like rearranging modules in C#. Get all these blank lines and spacing, and they sit on top of each other sometimes, and there's all kind of messy stuff, and the same thing can happen with tables. So I'm going to add another table, and this one is TBL enrollments. It has two keys that are also links, so I'm trying to remember that this time. Student ID, Control L. I'm just looking at it over here. And I'm not going to keep that lightning bolt because it's not bold like that one. Bold doesn't mean anything, but I want them to look the same. Section ID. Make them bold and make that guy red. So that'll be the home page red. Oops. Carried away. See where I'm going? Add another one. TBL sections. Section has a section ID. And it has one linking field, but it is not a key. Notice it's not a key, so don't make it a key. But it is a link. I'm just looking at my ERD here. Another table. TBL classes, class ID. No links if I remember right, but I'm going to double check. Yep. Two more. Oops. And now I've transferred everything from my ERD to my data dictionary. Now during the after class, I will rearrange these tables so they're in alphabetical order. It really saves a lot of grief. If we have tables, like a big pile of them like we do in the PC clinic, Sometimes it helps to alphabetize them ahead of time, but it also helps. What I will often do is put a table of contents up here at the top that are links so I can jump to them. If I have time, I'll show you how to do that. But that's not the point. The point now is for every one of our fields, put them into one and only one table. So I'm done with my ERD. My field list should still be here someplace. There we go. And let's look at the instructions real quick. Assign fields, attributes to the appropriate table. One and only one table. So here's my field list. I think Social Security number is going to leave our database. We'll just leave that one alone. Student name. Which table does it go in? Probably students, right? Shouldn't have to think too hard, but be careful. And we decided to split that. So let's call this the last name and first name. Is the order important? Not really. But it kind of bugs people if you put in first name, city, zip code, last name, street 1, middle initial, street 2. It just doesn't feel right. As long as there's some logical order, we should be okay. That's all you do here. You put it in the table where you think it goes. And we're done with that now. It's in a table. You'd never go back and say, oh, it also needs to be an enrollment because I need to know what the student's name. No, 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 no. One and only one table. Street address. City, state, zip, phone number, email address, all of those are in here. So I'm just going to keep going. Street address. I'm going Camelback now. Couple of ways I can add a new row. I can press tab, 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 and you might remember from your Word class when you get to the end, creates a new row automatically if you press tab again. If you're in the last cell of a table and you press tab, it starts a new row. The other alternative is control numeric plus sign. That's my macro. So that's the plus sign on the right-hand side of your keyboard over the number pad. That's what the macro is tied to. The command plus is just a keystroke. It's a shortcut key that's linked to my macro that adds a new row to the table. It actually adds a row underneath where your cursor is. So if I forget something, and I go, oops, I need one in between there. I could erase this type state, or I can come up here and press Control plus, and it inserts it in between. Inserts it underneath wherever your cursor is. Very handy. It was written for me in my instructor's notes. When you look at those instructor's notes, those are all tables. And each chunk of data is a row. And occasionally I need to add one in the middle, and it gets real annoying. It's easier in Word 2013 than it's ever been before, but Control plus, just automatic for me. Did we decide to leave the state in there? Are all our students in Wisconsin? Matt, you're going no. Why?
Well, what if they came from out of state?
Came from doesn't matter. I'm looking at their current address. I came from Germany. That doesn't matter.
Online classes?
Pardon me?
Online classes?
Online classes. There you go. It's definitely possible for somebody in Germany, heaven forbid, but let's just keep it to the United States, keep it simple here. Definitely possible for somebody from Minnesota, for instance, or Upper Michigan to sign up for classes here, for that matter, in California, if they really want to. We have a couple of them from out of state, not too many. If we wanted to simplify this and simplify my example, we could take that state out, but it's a great field for validation and a couple of other things too, so I'm going to leave it. So we have a zip code, and then another plus, and then we have a phone number, and another plus, and an email. Microsoft Word does not recapitalize words. If they have a capital letter in the middle like this, it leaves them alone, figures you know what you're doing. When I typed the city, or one of these, it tried to capitalize it. If it capitalizes it for you automatically, it's an autocorrect. Microsoft Word trying to help you out here. Just press Control Z right away and it'll put it back. and it tends to remember after a while. Oh, I guess he doesn't want me to auto cap this document. It quits. All right, now I have a program code. That should already be in. It is. Don't put it in again. If you got your keys are probably on this list. If they're already in there, don't put them in again. Program name. Probably programs, right? Now, my notes say name these properly as well. If they don't have a really good name in the original field list, give them a better name. Now's the time. Once we're done with this data dictionary, that field list is gone. This data dictionary becomes our field list. GPA we scratched because it's calculated. Course grade, ooh. That's for you, right? That's for students? Do you have a grade? If I told Joni she's an A, she'd probably slap me. Right? Would it go in classes? Well, remember, classes in this database is RDD. It's not even this section of RDD. So maybe it goes in the section. No. It goes in your enrollment. Remember, this is you in this section of RDD. That's where your grade shows up. I don't grade you. I don't grade the class. I grade you in this class. That's enrollment. So that's a tricky one. Sometimes it's not easy to figure out where they go. If you put it in the wrong place, a little later, not in this unit, but in the next unit, we start entering in sample data. And so then if you put it in the class, you're typing RDD, and then the next box says grade. And you're going, grade, for who? Well, maybe the grade doesn't go there. So you put it into student, and you're typing Isaac, grade. For which class? I guess it doesn't go there either. When you put in the sample data, sometimes you find out you got fields in the wrong place. So that one's a little tricky. Course number, I think we already have. Changed it to class ID. Course name. Notice here they're courses. Maybe that wouldn't have been a bad idea to change it to courses. And then have to go back and change my ERD and then change all the keys, and I don't want to do that. Why? Because we're programmers and the word class means something to us, and that gets annoying sometimes, but that's also why I put prefixes on this. No, it's not a class, it's the table related to that class. But later on, we'll create a class for the classes. And one class is called a class. We can't have a class called class. That doesn't work. So that's probably why I switched it. Too late now. So let's call it the class name. Class description. How many credits is it worth? Now, this is an interesting one as well. When I first taught programming logic beginning, it was a 3-credit class. So I can't get everything done I need to get done in 3 credits. I need more time. So we made it a 4-credit class. But there were people in 1990 something who took it for 3 credits. If I put it in here, and I later change it to 4, everybody who ever took it in the history of the course gets it for 4 credits, even if they didn't take it for 4 credits. So every class has credits, but what I'm going to call that is the current credits. And then each section has a credits earned. That's one of those that I've done this so many times that it comes back. But I also know that programming logic has changed. What if you didn't sense that? My guess is you get pretty much through writing the program, and then all of a sudden, the number of credits changes, and you get a phone call from somebody who said, my GPA just went down. I graduated in 1997. My GPA has been 297 ever since. And yesterday it switched. Now it's 295. What the heck? And we go back and we verify. And we look around and we show printed transcripts. Geez, it was 297. Were we calculating it wrong? Are we calculating it wrong now? No. Tracking that one down is nasty. What happened? Oh my God. And why would somebody in enrollment maybe not even know this, right? Oh my God, the number of credits for programming logic just went from 3 to 4. That person got a C minus in that class. And when they add one more credit of C minus, it lowers your GPA. Maybe we'd be able to track that one down. It's a good thing I thought of it. It's the one advantage of having instructors been around for 23 years. I've seen most of it, maybe not all. So that's a dangerous one. Course time, that goes in classes, right? Because it says course. RDD, what time does it meet? It doesn't. This section of RDD meets at 11 o'clock. Right? A class, RDD, here's the description, learn about databases. It doesn't have a time associated with it. The section of the course has a time associated with it. It also has days associated with it. We meet, what I mean by this is we meet Tuesdays and Thursdays. Whoa, very good. Just see it. It's bothering me. Could be. If it's a multi-value field, which is what she's proposing, because that has Tuesday and Thursday all in one field. Well, how does that normally appear on your schedule? TH right next, TTH right next to each other. If I make this a separate table, one section meets on multiple days, and the day Tuesday can have lots of sections on it. It's not just one extra table to split that. There's a linking table in between, all because I don't want to put T and TH in the same box. Just made a design decision. We're going with it. But she's right. It's a multi-value field. But I'm making a decision here that it's a small enough multi-value field that it's not going to cause me any trouble. At least not in my simplistic design. Would I do that in the real world? Yes, I did it that way. My attendance program keeps track of what day this class meets. What does it store in the database? T and R. R for Thursday. And I write the logic in my program to say T and R, that means Tuesdays and Thursdays. Is today Tuesday? Yes, good. Bring that up. Some multi-value fields are just easier to deal with. There's a multi-value field and they are 3 more tables, 2 more tables. Guidelines, right? There's no fixed rules. A purist would just cringe at that. But when you start writing these things for real, particularly if you're not at Skyward at Sentry, and if you are at Skyward and Sentry, you don't get to design tables. Somebody else is doing that. But if you're doing a volunteer project for Boys and Girls Club, for YMCA, for your church, for whatever, you can complicate things a lot and delay the time it takes to get this project done by making sure it's 100% third normal form. Then the next question is, how do I know when I should break the rules and not break the rules? Experience, try it. That's all I can give you. Okay, so we have the course days, instructor number we already have, instructor name, home phone, business, address, and website. I think I know where that goes. Notice that none of these are keys, none of these are links. Those were predefined. The only way I would be adding keys and links is if I followed up on Karen's suggestion to add more tables to resolve my multi-value field. If your ERD is done, and you're not modifying the ERD, you shouldn't be messing with links or keys. They're already predefined at this stage. Instructor number, so I'm going to do instructor, I'm going to use the abbreviation, I think I can understand that. Last name, could I just call this last name?
No.
Why not?
You haven't understood it.
So,
You're not-
not a problem. Now, Hernandez would say every field in your database has to have a unique name other than linking fields that we're sharing across tables. I don't completely understand that. It's not required. I could make this last name and it'll work just fine. Because when I do a query, when I say give me the instructor's name, I have to designate the table, give me the instructor's name. Well, what if I want the student's name and the instructor's name? Then I definitely have to designate student last name, instructor last name in my query when I write it. So there's really no confusion for a programmer. And when it displays on the screen, it might say last name, first name, last name, first name. That's about the only time it causes trouble. I think Hernandez is implying it occasionally gets confusing if you do that. In my Lions Camp program, we took all the names out of the tables. We said, instructors don't have names. There's a names table. My students swore it's a good idea. I'm not convinced yet. There's too many of them, so I had to give in. It's another one of those, I'm not quite sure what the right answer is. Personally, my small databases, no more than 50 tables, something ridiculously small like that, yeah, I'd give them the same name. First name, what else I got here? Home phone and business phone, that's another thing that often gets pulled out. Is phone numbers. That way if people share a phone number, there's only one copy of that phone number. So my wife and I, we don't share a phone number anymore, but let's pretend we do. If we shared a phone number and then we change it in one place and both of our phone numbers change at the same time. It's another one of those I'm kind of shaking my head at going, man, how often do we have people with the same phone numbers? But again, the purist would say, yeah, but if Volker and Sue are both in your database, you want to change both their same phone numbers at the same time, don't you? Yeah, probably should. Phone numbers are often pulled. And then I would have a table of phone numbers that are linked to different people. Here's the phone numbers for Volker. And I have two here, right? But nowadays there's work phone, there's cell phone, there's home phone, there's pagers, there's Skype phones. I don't know if there's such a thing. That's at least 5 different phone types. And if I have all 5 of those hanging on my belt, we don't have room for it here. So I asked the owner, you ever going to have more than those 2 phones? You're going to care about somebody's personal phone, or maybe what do you want to do there? In this database, here's my answer. What do you need the instructor's phone number for? That's home phone. In this database, what classes have you taken? Who taught them? Don't think I need it. Work phone? All right, maybe. So I'm going to take that one out. I've convinced my owner they don't need that one. That happens. You don't need that field. True story, Lions Camp. We're rebuilding it, redesigning the database. I look in the old database and they have a race field, as in Caucasian, African American, etc. They're all blank. 3,000 records, not a single race entry. Nathan, we got a class. Not a single race entry. So I called them up. Say, you still need this? You're not using it. They go, yes, please. Couldn't talk them out of that one. But you're not using it. I know, but we have plans. It's been in there for 3 years, I think. And they haven't used it yet. But they have plans, so it stays. But you might be able to talk your owner out of a field if it's appropriate. Let's change that to office phone, because that's what we call them here. And then we have an email address. Now, is that my instructor's email address, or did I have one for student as well? Oh, look at there. Same names. Joni's cringing. It's okay. Website, by the way, is one word. I learned that. I mistyped it and somebody dinged me on it. End of list. Every field is now in a single table. Did I miss anything sitting over on the side here, or what's the question? Go ahead.
When you were naming under classes, you switched all the classes to courses name?
No, I didn't switch them. I switched all the courses to classes because I didn't want to have to redo my ERD in the interest of time. Real world, would I have changed them? Maybe. But my ERD already says classes. My ERD already says class ID. Plus, it's linked to the section table with a class ID. I'd have to find all the classes and change them to courses. In the interest of time, I've decided not to. If we'd been more awake, we might have said, oh, that's a course table, not a class table. But there, we just got some experience. In the future, if you ever have a table and you want to call it class, don't do it. Unless you have to, I can't imagine it. Courses usually works. Question? Field list is gone, right? And I'm kind of consistent here. It's class name and class ID. Maybe in my spare time, I'll go clean all those up and make them course ID and course name and TBL courses, and then go change it in the ERD. And good thing there's no play. It's early. It really is. Now's a good time to do it. But it'll take 5 minutes, and I don't want to take 5 minutes. Matthew.
Should you really start abbreviating with instructor after you didn't abbreviate with instructor ID or with any other word?
Good point. Happy now? I don't like to abbreviate. Let me share another new. This is learned this semester. I just learned this in my systems class. We have a bunch of lookup tables. There's a list of races that we can choose from. Because we don't want black and African American and African-American. We have Hispanic, Latino. Is that Hispanic space Latino, Hispanic / Latino? I'm not giving them the option. Here's a list, pick one. It's a lookup table. What occurred to me one day driving home is all my lookup tables look very much the same. They have an ID and then they have the value. So Caucasian is 1. African American is 2. Cell phone is 1. Home phone is 2. If I name the tables wisely and I name the keys wisely, I'm going to try to write one form in PHP that lets me edit any lookup table that I want. As long as the table name has the same name as this is plural, this is singular, I think it's going to work. And so I don't like to abbreviate key names because I want them to match my table names for lookups. Now, this is not a lookup, but that's another little thing I learned. I could save myself a whole lot of programming. I could have 20, and I think we have 10 lookup tables in Lions Camp right now. I hope to write one form that lets me edit any one of those tables. So if I want to make it Hispanic / Latino instead of -Latino, I change it in one place, but I use the same form, and I use the same form to go change the races if that's what I want to do. Okay.
What do you do if the categories themselves change at some point?
Categories like
the racial categories
right.
were redefined in the
That's why we made it a lookup.
2010
So
then
you change it in one place.
their race might change.
Yes.
Or where their categories might change.
The category might change.
Right.
All right, because
So what would you do?
African Americans have been called different things throughout history, and maybe it'll change again. What we do is it's in that one table, we change it in one place, and everybody in the database becomes African - American or whatever the new term
That's
is.
if the name changes, but if the way that their categories actually changes.
Then I can add another category. That's a complicated one. And that's why it's a lookup table, because I can add another category to it. I can add another race. Right now they have other. Right? And if they wanted to get more specific and put Sioux Indians in there instead of Native Americans, we can do it. But then we got to find everybody who claims to be a Sioux Indian and change their race, because it'll be Native American. It's that flexibility that we're trying to design into this, right? That's what we're shooting for. Yeah.
I know this is probably way in the future question, but
My favorite kind.
do the queries have like a search and replace?
Yes, there is it's called an update query. Find every occurrence of Native American and change it to Indian? No, because it's just a code. In the database, in our database, when we're done, when you look Native American, let's pretend it's number 4 on my list of races. Everybody who's a Native American doesn't have Native American, they have 4. And so if I want to change Native American to American Indian, I change it in my lookup table, and everybody else is all the rest of the records are automatically updated.
Oh, so it's like an auto change.
But yes, there's still occasionally it happens that you need to do basically a search and replace, and you can. You can say find everybody whose school is Mid-State Technical College and change it, or better yet, whose school is Mid-State Technical Institute, as we used to be, and change it to Mid-State Technical College. We can do a search and replace like that. They're a little bit more rare than they used to be, only because we've got well-designed tables now, and the school name is probably off in one place, and we change it.
So if you change programming logic to software development, does that change records, previous records?
Changes everybody's done it. At least in this database it does. What happens there is we end up with a new class. And it gets its own brand new ID. So we had programming logic 152.101. We have programming logic intermediate 152.102. If we created software development beginning, or whatever we want to call it, that would probably become 152.103. It gets its own number. The problem is now we got all these numbers and we've run out. Well, that's what we get for not using an auto number field. I can create a brand new class called software development that still has a 152.101 number on it. As long as I have an auto number field, I can do that, but they didn't design it that way. And the state didn't design it that way, so we're limited to what we can do. Wasn't that long ago, the IT programs, all of them were 107s. But there were so many classes in security and networking and customer service and software development and web development that we ran out of 107 numbers. And so they said, we need to redesign. 107s are all still there. Nobody uses them anymore. They're there for historical purposes, and we're all now different 150s. Software development's 152, networking's 150, and so on. And so that auto numbers would have just solved all that problem. But that's a state system that's going to be painful to fix because it works, sort of. Go ahead.
So the auto number fields?
Yep.
They're just linked between each table, so each table could have start at 1 for the auto.
Absolutely. They're not related to each other at all.
So then just a column, you just call the table, and then it's
And its auto number field will be, yeah. You'll see those when we start building them. So there will be, if I had auto number fields for instructor IDs here, I don't because we have 8-digit IDs. Okay. If I had auto number for instructor IDs, there would be an instructor number 1, and there would also be a student number 1. Doesn't matter, 2 different tables.
It always starts at 1 though.
Yeah. What if you want to start them somewhere else? Why? It's an auto number field, means nothing. What do you care what the number is? Shouldn't. But my check number started on, that's not the auto number field, that's the check number field, that's a different one. Don't try to make an auto number field into something it's not. It's just, I hate to call them random, they're not, because they're sequential, but it's just a number that means absolutely nothing. Yep.
Joey's question about the course name changing.
Yeah.
And your description of the credit, number of credits changing.
Can I do the same thing there?
You
Yep.
probably need a field that's like a semester.
Right, current course name, and in the section here we would have something like, because here we have credits earned, right? I don't know what I would call the course name now, or course name at enrollment, or what, no, probably not. We could.
But if you had a field that said, this this is the semester. You know, like right now we're in the RDB section that's spring 2015.
Yeah, where is that, by the way? Good question. How do I know what semester this is? Missing that. Good catch. You see how database development goes? If it's perfect when you're done, you better retire. Write a book. And don't build another one ever again because they're not going to be perfect. You always think of something. So where do I put this? Well, it wasn't on your main list. Go, well, duh, it's the semester we need to know. Shouldn't I have a semester table? Probably, maybe. But it's get too complicated. I don't want to get complicated. Try to keep it simple. Let's not make it. So let's stop making this real, shall we? I know we like to. PC Clinic is much closer. We'll work on that one next week. But let's leave it at this. The next step, and by the way, this is part of what's in that data dictionary assignment we talked about at the beginning of the class, is build the data in addition to the Premier Products ERD, give me the data dictionary. Well, does the book tell you what kinds of fields you have sample data? Try to figure it out from the sample data. You shouldn't have too much trouble. If you're not sure, ask me. So that was step 8. We just assigned all the fields to tables. Done. Checked off another one. In my 10 steps, remember step 10 is review your work, make sure you didn't screw it up. So this is the last step right here. Oh yeah, but it's a fun one. Again, that's italicized, bold-faced, quotes are on it. Little squinty, happy face after it. Really? Fun? This is the challenging part now. For every single field, we need to determine its size and its type. Specify a range of values. Is there any formatting that you want to designate? At some point, I'm going to save this one for last. Designate the logical keys. And then create some sample records. So let's forget about logical keys and let's forget about sample records for just now. Let me show you what I mean by specify the size, type, range of values. Let's go back up here to student because you can all relate. Student ID. First question we have to ask is, this is auto number because it's a key and it says ID. So it's very likely to be an auto number, but I think in the interest of accuracy, since we're trying to be here, you have a student ID number. Why waste it? It's unique, I hope. I'm going to retire before student numbers become non-unique because then all my examples go to pieces. So it's not an auto number field. If it were, let's pretend, because we need to get this done. Let's pretend it's an auto number field. What type is it? It's what? No, it's not. Because in order to generate the next one, I have to do math. So it's what? It's an integer. So if this were auto number, you say int, and then what's its default value? It's auto generated. That's what an auto number looks like. Here's another hint. There's very few, they do exist. There are very few auto numbers in the Premier Products, Henry Books, Alexamar, Marina. Very few. How do you know if it's auto number? 1, 2, 3. If it's anything other than 1, 2, 3 sequential numbers or something close, it's not auto number. Your student IDs are not auto numbered. Do we do math with your student IDs? No, so it's text. I put a T in there for text. If it's a text field, remember from your Microsoft Access class, you also have to specify its maximum size. What is it? 8. And it's not auto. Default means, is there a value that we should assume for new records? Like in the programming class, we have pizza. We assume 1 pi is a starting value. It's just a starting default value. Don't have to stick with it. But is there a default value for student IDs? No. It's like, is there a default value for first names? No. Now, you have your choice when you build your DVDs, data dictionaries, DDs, data dictionaries. You can go this way and say, okay, what's this default? None. Are we doing any validation? What are the rules for student IDs?
Has to be 8 numbers.
Has to be what?
Has to be at least 8 digits.
At least 8 digits?
Or 8 digits.
It has to be 8 digits. Not less than 8, not greater than 8, not letters, 8 digits. We're learning about validation in a programming class that fits right in. We've been checking to make sure it's less than, right? No, that's what we're doing. No, we did that. Is the first name less than the maximum length for the first name? We don't have to check for less than. We can say, is the first name equal to, or is the student ID length equal to? We still have a constant because maybe someday in the future it'll change. The student ID length equal to. Because if it's less than, that's not good. If it's greater than, that's not good. If it's got letters in it, that's not good. 8 digits. There's no additional formatting. Description, I have that box out there in case I want to throw something in here that I don't have any place else to put. You'll find most of my description columns are blank. Every now and then they come in handy. So you can go this way and then go down to the next row, or you can do what they taught you in the Microsoft Access class and say, okay, last name, text, how big? Ooh. Want Volcker's philosophy? Estimate on the low side. If you make it too small, somebody's going to complain, right? Because they're going to go type, 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 and it's going to stop, and it won't go any, what? Then you'll go, well, how many letters is that last name? 21, oh, okay. And you fix the program. And of course, you charge them $8,000 and you change the constant, and you're done. Man, it's a little more complicated than that when we put databases into the mix, but not much. So you charge them $8 and you fix it, and they go on. If you make it too big, we make the last name 100. Who's going to complain? Because their program doesn't work. Nobody. Are they going to complain because their database is too big? Probably not. So my philosophy is estimate on the low side until you got a good number. And by the way, I've been doing this long enough, I got good numbers. My Lions Camp database has 20. I have not had to change it yet. But I have a different database where 20 didn't cut it. It was at a hospital. 20 didn't cut it, so I changed it there to 25. And I usually round these to the nearest 25 or nearest 5 unless I know an exact value. Then I use the exact value. So that one's done. First name, T. Lions Camp's 15. Think about it. That's a pretty long first name if it's longer than 15. But we don't have middle names here, any of that stuff. So if we got a Billy Joe Bill Bob, now we're going to squeeze all that in here. I haven't seen any of those in Wisconsin either. 20 is going to cover it. Easy. If you're off by 5 characters, okay, your database is a little too big. If you're off by 55 characters with 5,000, 5 million records, it starts to add up. And yes, it makes a difference. If you make them too big, the databases don't adjust. They save room, and they get bigger than they need to be. Street address. I don't remember. Let's go with 30. Well, what if I have a 123 Mockingbird Lane South apartment 17? Well, most databases today, for simplicity, we're going to skip it, have a second street address, second line. So it's 123 Mockingbird Lane South. That might fit into 30. Apartment B goes on the second line. in the second field. We don't have to display it that way. When we put it on an envelope, we can still make it fall off the end of the envelope by concatenating them together later. I'll go with 30. I think that might be a little small. Yeah, let's go 40. What do we care? We're not going to build it anyways. You estimate. Now I just said on the low side if you're not sure. So back to 30. Because if it's too small, somebody will let me know, and it's a quick fix. City, 30. State, 2. Zip code, 10. Anybody else? 5. 9. What the heck? All of you are potentially correct. I'm not so sure about 10. 5 or 9. Why? Well, there's a dash. Joni's counting the dash, right? We don't store the dash. Again, we're saving space. The dash is always in the same spot, right? So you don't store it. You just plug it in there when you display it. You save it without it. Now, again, I'm old. Today's database technology, storage technology, terabytes, who cares? Well, it's hard for me to quit. Plus, my databases are more efficient. Doesn't take any code, not much, one line. Put the dashes in the right spot. It's easy. Next question to your owner is, do you ever use the +4s? If they do thousands of letters of mailing, the post office is going to reward them for using +4s. How many of you, when you write to grandma her birthday card, put a +4 on there? I don't. Phone number. Given what I just said, 10. Because the dashes are, wait. What dashes? You don't have any European students in here. They're going, what do you mean dashes? They put dots in between all their numbers. And some people like parentheses around their area code. I can do all that. Whatever you want. If I store it without them. If I put this parentheses in there, then I got to yank them out. Now, that's not as easy. Putting them in is a piece of cake. Taking them out, that's tougher, as a matter of fact. So we don't put them in. Email address. Let's go with 50. Some of you are going, it might be a little low. We'll find out. So far, it's not. Again, I'm using my experience with 3-4 databases that are being used live. The hospital, Lions Camp, Midstate has one of mine, and they're not complaining about it. And these sizes are pretty close to what I'm using there. So that's a different way. So there's 2 different ways to attack this. You go across and then down, or you go down, 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 figure out all the types. Because now things get a little more complicated. Is there a default last name? No. Where here do you see a potential default? Good. That's an example. Most of our students, except those 3 who are taking online courses from Minneapolis, are from Wisconsin. So why make people type it over and over and over again? Put it in their form. If they want to, they can change it. But if it's in there, they just press enter and move merrily on their way. Another thing my students in my Lions Camp program are teaching me is, why don't we just use zip codes and make cities and states and everything else a lookup? Give me your zip code. I can tell you your city, right? Pretty close. And so we're trying that there. This works for me too. What happens if we put in a city and we accidentally type the wrong zip? Is my database going to know? No. It comes back from the post office, I'll probably be able to figure it out. But their solution is, all we have in the student table is their zip code. And then maybe a link to the appropriate city. And state. Because the zip code definitely doesn't cross state borders that I know of. But it does occasionally, 2 cities share one zip code. It's pretty rare, but it happens. All right, so we're going sideways. How do we validate a last name? Okay, we can't. I agree. We could say it's required. Tell you, I'm not a big fan of required, but could say required, and that would go here. I've had students say, I'm tired of typing the word required. Can I put a little code in there? R or a little registration symbol or something, knock yourself out. I'm not a big fan of those. Now you'd think if I have students that I'd have a last name and a first name at least. Probably. What about formatting? This is what we're doing today in programming logic. Is there something I can do to somebody's last name to make the user's life a little easier? I love that feature. It's in all my programs. When I grade your papers, I have another Word document just like this one with macros built into it. And it pops up and says, who's this evaluation email for? Because you notice the emails all kind of sound the same? Attached is your book assignment. Please check Blackboard. Have a great day, whatever it says. I don't even read them anymore. It's a template. It asks me, what's the student's name? Val, all lowercase. It goes, let me take care of that for you. I love that feature, especially in a database. Type it lowercase. A database program can't do it. Access can't do it very well. Got to do all kinds of gyrations. But my GUI, you'll see it today. It's easy, especially with the Volcker tool. So any field that you would like to automatically capitalize, put AutoCap in there. That tells the programmer. We're talking to the programmer now. We're talking to two people now. We're talking to the database builder, and anybody who's been through beginning access can now build my database, right? Because if I gave them this with all of these, they're done. They can do that. Don't put this in the database, by the way. That default doesn't go in the database. So you have to change it. Now you got to change it in the business class, and you got to change it in the database. So we don't want to do that. Anybody can build these tables who's been through beginning access. The rest of this stuff is for the front-end developer. We're now planning for this. This is what you got to know to do your job. The boss said, the owner said that the first name is required and it should be automatically capitalized. And they don't even ask for that. That's what I say. You want that automatically capitalized? You can do that? Oh, yeah. How about the street address? Required? Yeah, maybe not, but I'm going to auto cap it. What about the numbers? Oh, don't worry about it. Skips them. I don't even know how to capitalize Center Point Drive. I don't know if it's a capital P. I hope not. I type 1001 Center Point Drive, all lowercase in all my programs, and it goes, makes it right. City? Can I put a default in there? No, we got too many. I could put Wisconsin Rapids in there or Stevens Point. And a third of the time, maybe a quarter of the time, the user goes, oh, that's right, enter. What if it's not? They type because I highlighted it for them. So it's already selected. All they have to do is press enter to keep it, or all they have to do is start typing, which they would have had to do with an empty box anyways. Very common question is, how do you know when to put in a default value? Is it like 50% of the time? 75% of the time? I mean, for our state here, that's 99.9% of the time. That's obvious. But maybe 25% is enough. Because 25% of the time, I save time by just pressing enter and leaving it alone. Possibility. State. Can I validate it? Should be a lookup. It shouldn't be a field. But I left it, remember? on purpose, because I want you to think about how would you validate this? What's a legal state look like? What? 2 letters. Or just type it normal, doesn't matter. That just makes it stand out. 2 uppercase letters. Am I validating for uppercase letters? No, I'm doing it for them. Type whatever you want, WI, lowercase, little w, capital I don't care. I'm going to change it to all uppercase. So there's 2 parts to it. There's a validation. It has to be 2 letters. And it should be uppercase. We are going to make it uppercase. Where's the hole? Wisconsin, WS. Legal? Yep, 2 letters, uppercase. Legal, still not valid. That's why state is usually a lookup. But I wanted to talk about the validation. And again, if it's lookup, guess what? That means there's a table. You can see why these get so big. Because there's a lot of lookups. The good news is the lookup tables are little itty bitty things. Bad news is it's still there. I still have to think about it. I still have to link it. I still got to do all that stuff. And this semester is ending very quickly. Notice that yet? Guess we haven't had spring break yet, so you wouldn't notice. But it's moving. Zip code. 5 digits. How do we prevent the user from typing? Oh, key press. Duh. Did that, right? This is an integer key press. And then in the business class, I'm looking ahead, way ahead now, right? In the business class, it checks to make sure that there are 5 characters. Some people will make a zip code an integer. Don't argue with them. Not worth it. 5 characters, an integer, probably takes up pretty much the same room in memory. Doesn't matter. I can manipulate a zip code a little better if it's a string, especially if you want the dash. If it's an integer, I can't put the dash in it without converting it to a string. Phone number. 10 digits. All 10. Right? Well, if you want to get fancy and put in an area code, I don't recommend it anymore. Used to. Don't recommend it anymore. And another thing I will occasionally do is come all the way up here and say that my phone number format is that. Because there's a potential, right? I can have phone numbers all over my database. I already do. Got a student phone number, got an instructor phone number, and I don't want to have to put that phone number in a whole bunch of different places, so I define it once. Since it's at the top, hopefully the designer will see it and say, whenever you spit out the phone, we want consistency. Whenever you spit out a phone number, this is the way it should look. That becomes a constant. It's a formatting constant. We can change it easily if the customer decides they want to change it. Same thing for the date. Or whatever format they ask for. But it needs to be consistent. That's why I put it at the top instead of every single table, because then I don't have to worry about the consistency quite so much. And again, we've done a 2-string, right? In C#, we've done 2-string, and then some date format in there. Well, that's a string inside that. You can assign it to a constant. You can make it a global constant so that every single form knows about it, every single class knows about it. And they all use the same one. If we decide to change it, we change it once. That comes in handy. All right, let's see if we can finish students up here and call it a day. 10 digits. Phone number format should be up above. Maybe you put a little footnote thingy on here, right? Put a 1 on that one and a 2 on that one. And since this is a phone number, we footnote it and say, go up there and look what it's supposed to be formatted like. Maybe. Not for me. Email address. Auto caps? No. There is a pattern that every email address must follow. It's the ugliest thing you've ever seen. For me, it's not worth it. Though, just because it's ugly doesn't mean that all that means is I have to write it once in my code. And again, it's almost like a string. It's a pattern, is what it's called. It's a pattern. I get it once. It's ugly. I don't understand it. So what? So let's put that in there. The standard email pattern. Well, how would you know that there's a standard email pattern? You wouldn't yet. Next year you will. So I don't expect anything there. I'm just introducing you to it. It's called a regular expression. You're going to hear it next year in the fall. I'll introduce you to regular expressions and we sneak them in here and there. It's a language all its own for generating patterns. Here's what they look like. A bunch of letters followed by a dot, followed by a bunch of more letters, followed by an @ sign. Or maybe there's 2 or 3 dots. Who knows? Somebody has dreamed up the pattern, said every email matches this pattern. If it doesn't match this pattern, it's not an email. If it does that make it an email? No. vlker.gall@mstc.edu. It's legal, but it's not real. So there's not much you can do with an email. Must be ready for a break, huh? Questions about that? Come back on Monday. We'll finish this one up. We'll go through and do the rest. Unfortunately, one of the things I don't like about this example, it doesn't have auto numbers, but that's okay because then we're going to go to PC Clinic where every blooming thing's an auto number. You get the impression that it's either all or none. That's not true. Just the way these 2 examples worked out. So we'll do them both PC Clinic to a reasonable extent, but not a whole. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. Just don't have the time. Questions? I'll save this on OneDrive so you can look it over. This is the second part. When I give you the assignment, it'll be next week sometime when I give it to you for those database design assignments. I say assignments. It's one with 2 parts. When I give you those, this is the second part of it. And the only thing you haven't seen is logical keys. And we'll save that for last because it's painful. Hour and 23-minute recording.